Hi, welcome to our Exegetical Task video number 4. We'll be going over the fourth exegesis task in this video along with an example. I'm going to be switching to PowerPoint mode. Be sure that you've turned to the page in your document so that you can take notes if need be while we work through the PowerPoint. Over here, the goal is to determine a literary context. This is the goal for our study. We want to know what kind of book we have. Um, and not only what kind of book we have, but what kind of paragraph do we have inside our book. Our book's Galatians, but your paragraphs are all different. All right, so we're going to first of all determine the genre of the book, and you're going to select from one of these 4 categories. Now, this genre is already pre-selected when we built the course. It's an epistle. But you need to know that and assess that and use things that we know about epistles in your exegesis process. If we were doing a section of the Gospels or a section of Acts or a section of Revelation, you'd be saying different things on this part. But our genre is a letter that was written from one person to another and mailed by the first century standards of mailing. All right. Write a paragraph explaining each point of your outline from task 1. Be sure to have your outline finalized by this point. So if you needed to make any tweaks or fixes in your outline, you should have submitted them to me, and I would have approved them before moving on to this step. Write a second paragraph explaining how your paragraph relates to its relevant main point from your outline. In other words, your paragraph is a subpoint, most likely under one of your main points. You need to write a paragraph assessing how your subpoint that you're going to be exegeting relates to the main point that it's under, the top tier of your outline. Write another paragraph explaining the relationship between your paragraph and the one immediately before it. So every paragraph is in a context. There was another paragraph just ahead of yours, and it was related either to the main point, same main point that your paragraph's related to, in which you'll have one thing to write, but if it's in a preceding main point, then you have something different to write here. So if the paragraph immediately before yours is in a different top tier level of the outline than your current paragraph, that means your paragraph is the first point, first subpoint under your tier of the outline you're working on. So you're, instead of relating it to the paragraph, you'll want to relate it to the earlier point, the earlier main point, because those paragraphs are in different sections of your outline. And then the one after it as well. So in other words, you're saying, my paragraph appears here. It immediately follows the logic that was being developed for this part of the outline, and then it's preceded by this, whether it was a conclusion or an example or an illustration. You want to say that. You want to know where your paragraph fits within the close context of the one before and after. All right, here's an example. 1 Thessalonians 2:10. Obviously, 2 through 10. Obviously, this is an early paragraph. It doesn't have much before it. It's only got verse 1 before it. So we have a little something different to write than you might write if you have a major thought that's before your paragraph. 1 Thessalonians divides into 4 major parts based on our outline. It's step 1 and 2 when we worked on those parts. First, the opening in 1:1 to 10 consists of what is normal for a Greek letter of its time. In other words, we stopped the opening after verse 10, and that was where the body began. So we're dealing with the paragraph in the formal parts of the letter, not in the body part. We're dealing with the opening part, articulating the author, the recipients, the blessing, and the thanksgiving. Second, in the body of the letter, 1 through 16, the very next part of the letter opens the body. Paul explains that suffering is an expected part of the Christian life and expresses his personal his personal care for the Thessalonians as well. Third, in 2:17 to 3:13, Paul communicates his desire to strengthen the Thessalonians, having sent Timothy to them and desperately hoping to come to them himself very soon. And finally, in the last section of the book, Paul provides varied instructions for basic Christian living before closing out the letter. So our first essay, our first paragraph we're turning in, summarizes the main points of the outline, not the subpoints. 1 Thessalonians 1, 2 through 10 is the rather elaborate and enthusiastic Thanksgiving section of the letter. Now we've identified what our paragraph is. It's one of those formal elements, the 5 formal parts of a New Testament letter. It's not the first one, it's the second one, the Thanksgiving section. And we can put some flowery language in there to say what kind of Thanksgiving section we have. All right, now we're going to focus in on our paragraph. 1 Thessalonians 2, 13 to 16 is another example because this is more like the one you'll probably encounter. Unless you're dealing with Thanksgiving sections, you won't have a write-up like the one I just showed you. So let's take a look at this one, 1 Thessalonians 2, 13 to 16. The first paragraph would be the same as we wrote for the 1 Thessalonians 1, 2 through 10. The outline should be the same. So that first write-up would be the same. The second paragraph, though, will need to be more specific in describing the role of this paragraph in the context of the section. So here we have 1 Thessalonians 2, 13 to 16 as the last paragraph in the first section of the body of the letter. Now we come to these conclusions because we've paragraphed the whole book and we've tiered it with outline level 1 and 2. So we know that we're under point 1 of the body and we're the last paragraph of that point. The next paragraph will introduce point 2. So we say something like that. In this section, Paul first explains to the Thessalonians that opposition is to be expected in 2:1 to 6a. Then he relays his affection and concern for them in terms of a mother's love for her children in 2:6b to 9. That leads us up to our section. Following this, as a father, he calls on them to maintain their standard of excellence in their allegiance to Christ during persecution. At 2:13 to 16, he focuses on their own suffering. All right. This concludes task 4 of our outline, of our exegetical tasks. I ask God's blessing upon you as you work on this task, and I'm looking forward to what you put together based on your reflection of the main points of the outline and then how your paragraph fits within the larger web of the relationships of the paragraphs of the book. Thank you, and God bless you.